So this is the third part, continuing on exposure theory, how to avoid underexposure and overexposure, and how to understand how photographers talk to each other. We're going to get into a term which is called equivalent exposures, and we're going to understand that you can change the shutter speed and then change the f-stop without overexposing or underexposing if you want to control your depth of field and change it from shallow or to deep depth of field. You're going to change your lens opening, and then you're going to have to do some correcting with the shutter speed. Now, that's if you're using manual. If you're using a semi-automatic mode like aperture priority or shutter priority, the camera is going to do that. So I'm giving you the theory. I'm giving you the underpinnings of exposure. So across the top of the page you have all the standard shutter speeds. Remember, digital photography will show you many in-between shutter speeds, but the numbers that we talk about are 1, 4, 8, 15, 30, 60, 125, 250, 500, 1,000, etc. I'm going to give you a real quick review on the lens openings. So you remember, photography works in halves and doubles. So over here we're going to draw that T, and we're going to put F1 at the top, and we're going to put F1.4 over here. If you'll recall, I told you a silly story. F1 likes to golf, drops the ball, and then yells 4. So that's a memory aid. Maybe that'll help you to remember it. And then we said we can make all the others by just doubling, going down. Okay, and if I look on my trusty old Canon down at the very base, right about here, may not be able to focus. I'm going to read them to you. It says 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, and 16. That's printed right here on the lens barrel. Okay? So it holds true. Now remember that the bigger the F number, the smaller the circular lens opening, and then it gradually gets bigger as it goes up. Okay, and you will recall that every time you go from one number to its neighbor, you have either let in twice as much light or half as much light. And the same thing up here. Every time you switch from one number to its adjacent standard F number, you have either halved or doubled the amount of light that comes into your camera. That's called a stop. It's not called an f-stop, it's just called a stop. How do you define a stop? A stop is half or twice the amount of light. That is a stop. So the fact that these clever camera manufacturers and engineers came up with a halves and a doubles here and a halves and a doubles here, that means that we can start using both the lens opening and the shutter speed to adjust and readjust and refine our exposures. So one more time, let's go to red. One more time. Our f/16 rule, okay, is a triangle. If you're shooting outdoors in bright sun, that's when the f/16 rules work. If you have shade, if you have clouds, then you need to look on page number 11, your basic daylight rules, and figure out how to adjust for that. f/16 rule or basic daylight exposure. So the hard question is, if we use the f/16 rule, what lens opening should we use? And it's so obvious that some people forget it. You use the f/16 lens opening because it's called the f/16 rule. And I'd love for you to take out your camera and put it on manual on a bright sunny day and put it on f/16, and then I want you to figure out, what ISO do I have? Let's say you're using 400, ISO 400. So then you're going to put 400 over here, and you're going to put a 1 over the top, because 400 is your ISO. If you're a film photographer, you're a little bit out of luck, because as I look on my shutter speed dial, I don't see 400. So then I have to round off, and I have to say, well, 400 would be between 500 and 250. All right. So I can't quite get 400, but what is it closest to? It's closest to 500. So if you're using standard f numbers and standard shutter speeds, and you're using the rule, and you're coming up with some sort of a different thing than what your options are, then just look and say, okay, I got 250, I've got 500, I'm going to choose the number closest to it.